Simmers, it's time to lock in. It's time to commit to your save files, commit to your Sims, and their legacies. But what does it mean to actually commit? What does it mean to be dedicated to a Sim, for example? For me, if you're committed to your Sim, you're committed to the gameplay that comes with it. So it's not just coming up with a perfect storyline for them and for the perfect lore in your save file and all that. It's actually playing with it. And how can you measure that commitment? How can you tell how committed you've actually been? So it's pretty simple. For a Sim, it's the life stages you've played with them. It's the time you've actually spent in live mode with them, not the time you spent in CAS with the perfect outfits. So even if they've got like 5 outfits per category, like every day's got five fits, you've got 5 fits for outdoor and all that. No, the amount of time you've actually played with your Sim, ergo the amount of life stages they've experienced and maybe even passed away then eventually, that measures how committed you've been to that Sim and to their story. In terms of a legacy, well, that's obvious. Generations played. The more generations you've played with a legacy, the more time you've obviously spent with them. And for a save file, you know you're really committed if you've played a lot in that save file. So it's the amount of Sim years that you've actually played in that save file that determines how dedicated you've been. So in The Sims 3, it's really nice. You have the weeks number that is shown for you, so you actually know how much time you spent explicitly in that save file by the amount of weeks that have passed. But in The Sims 2 and The Sims 4, there is no real indication of how much time you spent in a save file. I mean, there is a mod that you can use to extract the data from a Sims 4 save files to extract how many weeks you've played, but essentially you have to track it manually. So you have to keep track manually of how many years have gone by. But effectively, if you've passed a few life stages with a Sim, if you have reached multiple generations in a legacy, and if you've played multiple Sim years in a save file, well, then you've made progress. Then I think you can call yourself committed. Then you've been pretty dedicated, for sure. And to make it easier to stick to that commitment and actually see how far you've gone, how much progress you've made, you can hold yourself accountable by keeping track of your gameplay. So in terms of a Sim, you could, for example, use a Sim planner and keep track of their life stages that they've lived. You can keep track of how their day-to-day lives have gone, their plans, but also what they have achieved. For legacy, of course, we can use a family tree app. My favorite by far is the My Family Tree app by Chronoplex. It is a free app that you can use locally, so you're not dependent on an online connection. It also uses the common and universal GEDCOM file format to save your family trees. So if you, for any reason, wanted to export your family tree and use it in a different app, then that'd be super easy. That's unfortunately not possible with a lot of the Sims specific family trees that you can find out there, but with the My Family Tree app it is, and plus it's free, like I said, and it has a ton of features to save your screenshots, to save stories, events, attributes about your Sims, so for example, their traits and whatnot. So it's really my favorite. I definitely think you should check it out. And then to keep track of the Sim years that we've played in our save files. So that's where it gets a little bit tricky. There's no real tool out there except for like maybe you could take a piece of paper and just keep track manually, like by hand, how many Sim years have passed. In The Sims 4, you can get creative and you can actually probably just create a holiday in your Sims 4 calendar that marks the day when, you can call it the Watcher Day or something like that. And that's the day when that day comes, you've played a full Sim year, and you can then jot it down, and it's like a reminder for you, oh, okay, I've played a full Sim year now. I can take note of that. But where do you take note of that, right? So like I said, in The Sims 4, you can keep track of how many weeks you've played. That is shown in the user interface, but there is no year tracker per se, and there is especially no actual way to see how many weeks you've played in The Sims 2 or The Sims 4. In The Sims 4, again, with a mod, but it's a bit finicky. So I personally like to keep track of this manually, and I'm so obsessed with keeping track of time gone by in my saves that I've created 3 different ways to do so. Well, actually more than 3 ways, because I've also created my digital Sim life planner, but I'm gonna just touch on my year at a glance printable set that is free to download. My Sim year tracker, it's a Notion template that I just now released, and it's super easy to use. And I have my Sim Guardian, of course, my dear system that I've built to keep track of everything about my Sims in Notion, but it includes also a fully fledged calendar system as well. And so I'm going to dive into each of those options today. The first 2 are free, and so you can download those immediately. And then if you want to invest, if you're like a hardcore simmer like me, if you're like really dedicated, then you can go grab the Sim Guardian. So the Year at a Glance printables, it's a set of 4 PDFs that you can download, and each PDF basically represents a different type of settings that you want to keep track of. So in The Sims 4, we can have 7-day, 14-day, and 28-day season settings. Depending on which one you choose, that determines the length of your year. You might be playing with 21-day settings, and so to accommodate for that, I'll also create an undated version. And you should probably also be able to use this for The Sims 2 and The Sims 3 as well. It's basically a set of printables that you can use to keep track of how many Sim years you've played in your game. Each printable also has space where you can keep track of notes, for example, on a weekly basis, or also there's a section at the bottom of each PDF where you can keep track of the general notes you might have for that save file. So if you're listening right now on the screen, I'm showing what the template looks like. So this is an example of what the 7-day season year at a glance template would look like. So since the 7-day season setting makes such a short year, so a year would only be 28 days, we're able to fit 3 whole years on this page. Each year is sectioned off into each individual season, and each season has 7 days. And so you have, Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, so each weekday. And then you have the number of each day. So you have day 1 of summer, day 1 of fall, and so forth. And you can check those off as you play, as they pass in game. And that way you can keep an overview of how much time has gone by in that particular year. And at the top of the page, you have space to write like the name of the save file, when you started that save file, maybe also which page this is. If you use these printouts and you print one out and you've completed 3-4 full years, well, then you can just print out a new one, and then you write down the number of the years for your new printable, and then you can keep track of year 4, 5, and 6 again, like for your 7-day settings, save files, for example. At the very bottom, you have space to add notes. And you also have space within each week to add notes as well. So for example, in this page that I'm showing on screen, you can jot down if anything special happened. Like, for example, I wrote Bella had coffee with Dawn. And then in the week of summer, in year 1, she found a new job. So you can write down any highlights. You can use that space as you'd like. But the main purpose of these templates is to help you keep track of time gone by. And it's just a simple sheet where you can just scratch out days like you would in any normal calendar. And it's super simple and straightforward. And this way it's a bit more structured out the gate. You don't have to configure this yourself on a piece of paper. You don't have to draw out lines in a bullet journal. You don't have to prepare everything. It's already done for you. You just have to scratch off the days as they go by. So if you prefer pen and paper, this is definitely, I think, something you might like. So there's a link in the description below for you to download that if you're interested. And then we have the Sim Year Tracker, which is a simple Notion template that you can use to collect your save files and also keep track of the time that has progressed in each save file. So it takes into consideration, of course, the different season settings that you can have. This template is in particular useful for the Sims 4 save files. So you can set up a calendar to track 7-day, 14-day, 21-day if you're using a mod, and 28-day season settings. So it's not ideal if you want to keep track of time for a Sims 3 save file or Sims 2 save file, for example. But if you're playing The Sims 4, then it's perfect for that. Each save file record also includes space where you can keep track of your sim session notes, so you can keep a log of what happened during each session for each year that went by in that save file, and you can also collect screenshots within those notes. So it's really practical as well for that. So I'm going to walk you through it real quick so you can see it in action. So on the screen now I have the Sim Year Tracker. So on the first page, we have the most important thing, the collection of your save files. So for example, here you can see I have a save file of Chaos, I have my favorite save file, the save file I'll never get bored of, and my second favorite save file. Those are just names I've given to those save files, and based on when you last played them, which is theoretically when you last edited that record, that is the order in which they're sorted in this view. So we have the save file of Chaos listed in the today row because I edited it today, and so it considers it that I played it today last. And then the last 7 days I had played the other 3 save files, so they are listed below in their own separate group. And this is also helpful because that way you can see which save files maybe have laid dormant for a while that you haven't played with, and it can be like, oh, a motivation to, oh, I could probably play that save file now. So one thing that we often do is we collect a lot of save files. We like to start fresh often because there's the novelty, it's fun. But do you actually have an overview of all your different save files that you've ever created? I mean, I know we like to keep track of when we're creating a custom save file, the lots that we've placed in it, the sims and all that. And if you want to just keep track of the set of save files that you've collected so far and the time that's gone by, then this is a super useful template for that. Each card also includes information right off the bat about that save file. So of course, the title of the save file that you've given it, the current sim year that you are in that save file. So for example, for the save file of Chaos, I'm officially in year 3 right now in that save file. You see which settings I have for that sim year. So I see I have 14-day seasons set for that save file. So that also gives me a bit of an inkling, okay, 3 years with 14-day seasons is, of course, a lot more time spent in the save file than maybe a 7-day season save file. So I think that's just interesting to keep front of mind. Also, when you go into that save file, you know how long a year actually is. And then we see the sim year progress. So in this particular save file, 71% is completed, and I have 16 days left to go in that sim year until it's completed, and until then I can move on to year 4. And it tells me also when I last played that save file. And so when I click into this record, you see at the very top, the name again, the heading of the record, we see the season settings. So we have 14-day seasons, the current sim year, and the progress. And then we have here a little instructions bar. So if there's a brand new save file that you just not created, then you'll be able to choose a template. So whether or not this is a 7, 14, 21, or 28-day season setting save file, you'll click on that, and then it would produce all of this on the page. And then you would have like 1-2 minute setup. And once you've completed those instructions, you would have a time tracker, and you'd also have a sim session notes section on the page. So the time tracker includes a button to reset the sim year and an overview of the different seasons in that year, each with the individual weeks for that season. So if you're playing in this case, a 14-day season save file, you'd have 2 weeks per season. They would have 7 days. So we have spring with week 1 and week 2, summer with week 3 and week 4 in that year, and week 5 and week 6 for fall, and week 7 and week 8 for winter. And then you have the individual weekdays that you can check off. And you'll see as I check them off, so right now we're at 16 days left to go, 71%. If I were to check off Friday and Saturday in week 6 of fall, and so that we'd only have 2 weeks left, it reflects it in the progress bar as well. So 75% of the year has been completed, and we have 14 days left to go. And that's great. And so if I were to complete the year and just keep clicking here on the different days, so I'm completing week 7 and week 8, and now we have 100% progress, 0 days left to go, and I've completed a sim year. I can then reset the time tracker by pressing the button, and then it automatically updates the current sim year I'm in. So now I'm in sim year 4, a brand new year, and I have now 0% progress and 56 days left to go until I have completed this new year. And I just think it's a really fun and simple way to keep an overview of how much time has gone by in your game, because of course in the game itself you can also keep track of time. You can have a calendar, but once that year has passed, there's no way of seeing how many years have gone by. And so this way you have that record of how many years have actually passed. And like I mentioned, you have a space at the bottom where you can keep track of sim session notes. We have session notes organized by year. So in year 1, for example, if I want to start keeping track of notes, I just open up this toggle here, and then I have the button new session. I click on that, and then it adds a new toggle for my session notes for that particular session. So I can rename it. So I just gave it today's date, but you can give it a more descriptive title, of course, if you want. And then you open up that toggle, and then you see you have space to add notes and screenshots as well. So you can add notes about what happened during that sim session. Maybe you can use this section to already make plans ahead of time so that when you jump into the session, you're like, okay, ready to go. I know what I want to do. And then you can just close it. And then if you have a new session, you would just click on the button again, and it'll create a new little toggle section where you can just open it up and add more notes and screenshots. And so you can keep doing that until you have, a year's worth of sessions that you've played. So a in-game year's worth. And for you in real time, you're, keeping track of when you actually had those sessions. And then say you've completed a year. Well, then you just click on the new year button below the sim sessions note headline. You just click that. And as you see, it adds a new toggle section where you can edit the year number. And then just like before, you have a button where you can add a new session, which will be added directly within that year section. And that way you can just nice and neatly keep track of your sim session notes, and as well as, what happened in your game, in your save file. And that's all nice and neat in this save file record. And here you have also a table of contents so that you can quickly navigate to a certain year, or right back to the time tracker. And so that's how the sim year tracker works. So you can use it to keep track of your save files, the time that's gone by in them, as well as any sim session notes and screenshots that you collect during your gameplay. And last but certainly not least, we have the Sim Guardian, which is a Notion system that I've built over multiple months. It took me a long time, but I really love it. It's a system that I use to keep track of everything about my Sims, from not only, time that's gone by, but entire save files worth of information. So I keep track of properties, Sims, households, legacies, the whole kit and caboodle. It's really great. But it also includes a calendar that I can use to keep track of events, holidays, even notes for each day, and of course also how much time has gone by in a particular save file. And the beauty of it is I can also keep track of time for multiple Sims games. So currently it's set up for Sims 2, Sims 3, and Sims 4. So you can keep track of time within any of those different Sim games. And you can not only keep track of time that's gone by in a Sims 4 save file, but also in a Sims 2 or Sims 3 save file. And I'm working on an update that will be coming out soon, which will let you keep track of Sims 1 calendars as well, because I will be adding an update to the Sim Guardian that lets you keep track of Sims 1 save files as well. Because as I mentioned, when I launched the Sim Guardian, it will be made to be compatible with multiple live sim games and also ones that are released moving forward. Technically, The Sims 1 was released a long time ago, but it has been re-released, so now that you can buy the game and actually play it, I want you to be able to keep track of your Sims 1 progress as well. And so that's an update that will be added very soon to the Sim Guardian. But currently, The Sims 2, Sims 3, and Sims 4 are definitely inside, and The Sims 1 will come soon. And yeah, Pair Lives and Inzoi, that's something I'll also work on in the future to make sure those are added as well. But that's just a little heads up for you. And the beauty of the Sim Guardian, since it's not just, designed to keep track of time or even just a save file, it's made to keep track of generations and Sims and households and legacies. So you can also keep track of that type of progress. As I mentioned at the beginning of the video, to keep track of or to be committed to a Sim is to play them in different life stages or in all of their life stages. To be committed to a legacy is to play for multiple generations. And so you can keep track of that in the Sim Guardian as well. So for a generation, you can keep track of the plans and goals that you have set up for that generation. Of course, the Sims that are in that generation, as well as the history of that generation and its heritage. And you can also keep track of Sim profiles. And if we're talking life stages, so we have a lookbook feature in their photo album where you can keep track of the different looks they've had throughout the years. We also have a section where you can keep track of their plans and goals as well, their history. There's even a space where you can keep track of like their character arcs, so a really concise collection of their milestones throughout their lives. So it's really useful for that as well. And so now I'd love to give you a quick walkthrough of those elements in the Sim Guardian as well, so that you see what I'm talking about. So on the screen right now, I have the dashboard of the Sim Guardian. So it's basically the most important things just on the front page. So we have our pinned resources. We have our save files, of course, collected similar to the Sim Year Tracker, but these save files have a lot more information in them. So they don't just keep track of time gone by, but also of, the characters in each save file, the households and whatnot. So I can show you an example. So this here is Keith's save file. And in it, we have, of course, the calendar, which we'll get to because that's really the main point of this video here is how we can keep track of time gone by, which is, a great measurement of the commitment that we have for a certain save file. We have plans, we have space to keep track of characters, lore, legacies, households, and a lot more. I would like to focus real quick on this little mini calendar, which is great. So we have the main calendar, which is tucked in here. And then we have a little mini calendar as just a quick overview of how much time has gone by, like a visual overview. And we see also anything that's important on that day. So if I had made notes on this day of anything in particular, that would be shown here. If there was a holiday on that day, we would see it as well. But within this space here, I can also complete a day. So I don't have to go into the calendar and check it off there. I can just check it off here. And as you can see, so we've moved from day 4 to day 5, and that's also reflected in the visual of the calendar as well. And if we want to open up the tab here of the calendar, if we open up the toggle, you'll see the current year that we're in, as well as the days that have been completed and that are still open and ongoing. And if we want to see this in a larger view, because as you can see here, it's a bit tight here, you can just open it up in a new tab in Notion, and then you have like this really spacious overview. And so currently we're on day 5. And so I can just, edit this. I can add a holiday, for example. So I have a holiday database also in the Sim Guardian where you can just, choose which holiday. So for example, we're in winter. So I can choose a winter holiday if I wanted, and it's shown in the calendar. I can add notes if I wanted to. And I can also check this day off. So that would reflect as well in the little mini calendar. So as you can see in the mini calendar, we are now on day 6. So there are 2 ways to complete days in the Sim Guardian. That is within the main calendar itself or with this little handy dandy mini calendar, which as you can see is sometimes just more convenient because you don't want to always navigate to this calendar in the tab view. But that's how you can keep track of time in the Sim Guardian. And what I really like about it is the fact that you can not only keep track of time gone by, but you can actually associate a in-game date to a memory. So you're not just keeping track of time gone by, so you can actually keep track of in which year and which day, season something happened. So let's just navigate to the lore section. So for example, here you can see I have different memories that Keith has made in his save file. So you can see when he moved to Moonwood Mill, that was in week 5 of year 1. That was day 2 in fall. And we see this throughout his memories when each one actually happened. So you don't have to keep track of that if you don't want to, if that's, overkill for you. I personally like to see that. It's just nice for me to see the memories organized in such a way, because also in the timeline, we can see them organized by year. So if we had any events, we would see that here, but in the memory timeline, we have all of our memories organized by year. So if I had year 2 as well, we would see those grouped accordingly. So it's just a really nice way to organize the memories chronologically, and just to see how things have progressed over time. And so we're not just keeping track of time that has passed, but also what happened during that time. And one thing I didn't note, you can also keep track of eras. So you have a day, you have a week, you have a season, and then you have a sim year. But in the Sim Guardian, you can also associate years with an era. So it could just be 1 year worth of time, for example, or multiple, but that way you can track a period of time. For example, say you're playing a Royal Legacy, then you can keep track of the era of King Dixon, and then the era of King George, for example. So if you have, want to keep track of eras in that way, or you can have an era of new beginnings and an era of change, or whatever you like. But that's also a fun way to keep track of time and how things have progressed in your save file. So I mentioned how being committed to a sim means actually experiencing different life stages with them, and being committed to a legacy means actually playing through multiple generations. And so I just want to show real quick how you can keep track of that in the Sim Guardian as well. So we're in the character profile of Ida Muniz, my favorite sim right now by far. And she has not experienced too much in the game yet, but I want to show, for example, under story, her photo album, because here I have a way to keep track of her looks over the years. So as you can see here, I have like a lookbook of sorts of the different outfits she wore in the different life stages. So this is also something I can open in a new tab. And this allows me to see everything in a more larger space, so I have a better overview, and I can see all the cute outfits she had, as a child, as a teenager, as a young adult. You can have multiple outfits per category. So as you can see on the screen, you have everything organized by everyday, formal, athletic, so by the different categories. And then you have it organized further subgrouped in the actual live stage. So you have a really nice clean overview of the different outfits. And if I wanted to see a particular outfit in close, so if I wanted to see what actually is Swirl and Twirl, for example, I just click on the photo and then I can see it in full screen view. So this is super adorable. Or one of my favorite outfits is her 90s R&B fit. Really cute. So if I close the photo album, we can check to her live timeline. And here you'll see a timeline of her memories just organized by when they happened, so in the year. And then we also have a character arc. So here, any important milestones that happened in her life are organized by life stage. And so in her case, I haven't really played her in her younger years. I played her starting when she was a young adult. And so far, she's had 4 different milestones. So she had a life milestone when she moved to Evergreen Harbor. She had a first milestone when she started her job at a local salon. She had another life milestone when she moved in with her fiance, Michael. And also when she went on a holiday with him because they ended up getting engaged. So I just now opened it up in full screen view just for a better overview, but you can have different milestones. So first, social, life, and failures as well. You can also create a different type of experience type if you want. If you have any that you want to keep track in your lore, you can keep track of where this memory happened, the calendar, date, and year, as I mentioned before as well. So that all ties into how you keep track of memories in general in the save file or in the Sim Guardian. But this is just a fun way to, keep track of that progress per life stage. And when we're talking about locking in and being committed, we're also committed to our Sims goals. And so for Ida, we have various plans. So we have, of course, an event coming up, her wedding with Michael. She has different goals. And you might notice here that some of her goals have a different life stage next to them. So those are goals in her bucket list, unrelated to the bucket list from Life and Death. This is a bucket list that I came up with before that pack came out. And it's basically a way to organize different goals your sim might have based on the life stage you want them to complete it in. So for example, I wanted her to find that special someone as a young adult, and she's done that. So we're going to click done. And I want her to have 3 children. When did I make that goal? I might have to remove that. I don't know about that. But she also wants to own a hair salon that is still current, more or less. And she wants to travel to Mount Komorebi. Not necessarily once she's an elder, but by that time, like by the end of her life, she wants to achieve that. So it's an elder bucket list item. And so that's also a fun way to commit to your sim by committing to different goals for the different life stages and that I want to experience with her during the life stage. And so knowing that we want to eventually travel to Mount Komorebi, maybe in retirement, that motivates me to actually play through her different life stages because I know that's a goal that I was looking to achieve then, or at least by then. Because as you can see, she's got a lot going on throughout life. I mean, 3 children, owning her own hair salon, that's a lot to get done. So I don't think Mount Komorebi is going to be on the list anytime soon. So yeah, it just gives you something to look forward to for your Sims, something to check off and feel accomplished about as well. Because we're talking about being accountable for being dedicated to your gameplay, to your Sims, your legacies and save files. And so this is a way to keep track of what's going on with them. And yeah, as you can see as well, once I check it off in the bucket list, it's no longer showed in her all plans view as well. So that's really neat as well. So the goal she had to find her forever person that has been checked off, and so it's no longer listed here. And last but not least, I wanted to show off a little bit about how you can keep track of a generation in the Sim Guardian. So we have different plans a generation can have. So this is a generation that is super old. So it was founded in 2010. So that is over 15 years now. I completed it based on some screenshot metadata. I must have completed it in 2011, beginning of that year. And so I didn't keep track of my Sims as well as I do today, so there's not much information about this generation, and there are no ongoing plans either. Like I said, like I didn't have the Sim Guardian back then, and I wasn't too on keeping track of goals, so there's nothing here. But this is where I could keep track of goals and plans that a generation has, on that generation level. So that is handy there. I can also keep track of any history related to this generation. So here I have, for example, a summary of that family, of their story here. I have a timeline similar to before where, I have different milestones. I have a memory gallery. In this case, I didn't take many pictures of this particular generation or have many memories collected. So yeah, I only have 2 here. But as you saw with Keith, I have a bunch. So once you start using the Sim Guardian with new save files, you'll definitely be able to keep track of your lore because, you're doing it very, consistently and structured. So it just comes more easily. Back in the day, I had like maybe OneNote, which is a great app. Also, I also have a template for OneNote, which I love. But I just, after making Notion, it's kind of my dream system of keeping track of my Sims. But yeah, OneNote is great as well. But back in the day, I was very intimidated by the blank page of OneNote, and I didn't really know at that time, like, what do I actually want to keep track of? What's important to me, and how, like, in which structure? And so, yeah, having that structure now really helps me to keep track of things regularly, and I also have an overview and something to reference, so I really love it. But with Heritage, you can also create notebooks for your Sims or for your generations in this case. And we also have an overview of the estate. So here I have a collection of photos, so a photo album for this generation in particular. I have an overview of any heirlooms that's related to them, any homes, businesses, monuments, that's all collected in the heritage section. And of course, I have an overview of any members. In this case, there's only one member because she is the founding member of this family. So this is first generation. And so it's Madison here. We see that she's deceased, who she married eventually, and her children, which are part of the consecutive generation of generation 2. And here in this section, we have more information about her, so her traits, and also the information we had below for members. But yeah, this is super practical. I really love the Sim Guardian. It helps me stay committed to my save files because I'm actually keeping track of what I'm doing. I'm able to also look back on what I did in the last session and review that. And again, like, you don't even have to get the Sim Guardian. I think for just keeping track of what's happening, like staying in the loop of your Sim save file, it can be as simple as just using the Sim Year Tracker and keeping those session log notes. If you're a hardcore simmer like me, then you might want to invest in Sim Guardian just because it can do like a bunch more, as you can see. And I just not touched on the surface of like the Sim profile and the generation profile and like how to keep track of time, but there's a lot more to it. So I really, really love the system for that. I just wanted to share some ways to help you keep track of time in your game, whether it's with a printable, with the Sim Year Tracker template for Notion, or, of course, the entire system, the kit and boodle, the Sim Guardian. Having that to hold yourself accountable, not necessarily only to hold yourself accountable, but also to motivate you and to also be like, oh, wow, I'm really proud. I've completed like 2 Sim years worth of time of gameplay now. Like, that's really great, because we always pride ourselves on how many played hours we have according to the EA app, but how many hours have we actually played in live mode, that's really where it counts if you ask me, if you're like a simmer that likes to play in live mode, like your game player. So yeah, you can use these 3 different tools to keep track of time and keep track of that commitment. And hopefully it'll help you stay more in the game to actually, motivate you to play the game. It's definitely helped me with mine. So make sure to check out the links in the description below. I'll leave a link to the printable set, the Year at a Glance, the Sim Year Tracker for Notion, and of course my dear and beloved Sim Guardian. I hope that you enjoy using them. Let me know in the comments below if you've been keeping track of time in your game as well, or if there's something new to you. I'd love to hear about your experience. And until then, stay sentimental and play with purpose.